Joining me right now is Senate Finance and Homeland Security and Appropriations Committee member, Oklahoma Senator James Lankford. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us. What are you expecting in terms of these troops going to the border? Do you expect that we're going to see a change in this crisis situation anytime soon?
No, it's continued support for what's happening there. The troops that are going to the border are not going there for actual law enforcement activities. We have Customs and Border Patrol. We have law enforcement that's there. They're going for humanitarian relief. They're going for additional assistance. They're going to do some of the next layer behind all the law enforcement. So we still have to have additional law enforcement individuals to be able to help us through this process. But with this many thousands and thousands, upwards of 4,000 a day that are crossing the border illegally, for months, but they still won't acknowledge the human trafficking that's going on, where we have thousands of kids that are being repeated in the border, where they'll come across with one adult, then be sent back across with a trafficker and bring another adult across. Some of these children, we don't know where they are. We have some children that the Border Patrol has reported they were actually purchased in other villages and brought across, and they have no relation and no idea where to return these kids. The loophole in our system is if you cross the border with a child, you get into the country. So that encourages adults that want to get into the country to get their hands on a child and to be able to bring them across so they can get into the country. We have got to close that loophole. And so far, Democrats have said they want to leave the border open. They want to leave that exposed. Over half of the adults that are coming now are bringing a child with them, and the vast majority of minors that are coming across now that are males claim to be 17 years old. We don't know if they're 25 or if they're 17. They have no documentation, but when they walk across the border, they say, I'm 17, because they know if they say that, they're going to get in.
Well, somebody is training them to say what they're saying, right? So what are you going to do about it? I mean, how does this play out when there's so much infighting going on within Washington? I mean, you look at the Democratic Party, they can't even get together. They're divided with the progressives turning up the heat, and then the moderates are fighting with Republicans. So do you just need to win another election in 2020 in order to get the wherewithal to change these loopholes?
So there are several things that have got to happen. One is the Democrats have obviously got to figure out if they're for open borders or not. They have said for years they're not for open borders, but their new progressives clearly are. They want to abolish ICE. They don't want to do enforcement interior, exterior. So there's a couple things that have to happen, though, to slow this down. One is the administration's already working with Guatemala and Mexico to allow that to be a third country for asylum seekers. So if you're coming from anywhere but Mexico, as you come through Guatemala and as you come through Mexico, you have to request asylum in those locations. That is the international norm. That's not anything different. That's the same thing that happens all over the world, that when you're seeking asylum, you go to the next country that will accept you. That will make an enormous difference on this. Doing ICE enforcement, and what the president's asking to do, is just enforcing deportations where an individual has gone through the entire due process system and a court of law have said, no, you don't qualify to be here. If you want to come to the United States, you got to do it legally. Enforcing interior is the other way to be able to get this going.
And we let in, what, 1 million people legally? I mean, that go through the process, getting the green card, et cetera, every year. Is that right?
That's correct.
Is that the right
number? It's about 1.1 million people go through the process to get legal permit status. About 700,000 actually go through citizenship every single year, which are amazing ceremonies. We're a wide open country for immigration if you do it legally.
Right. And now you're talking about 1 million apprehensions on the illegal side. It's just extraordinary. Look, I gotta turn to the clock is ticking and the potential shutdown showdown. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi setting a deadline for tomorrow for a deal on spending and the debt ceiling. Congress and the president hoping to avoid a government shutdown before the Congress recesses on August 5th. Last month, the Homeland Security Committee advanced the Prevent Government Shutdown Act. Tell me about that and what you're expecting in terms of a budget deal.
So we've been trying to be able to get a budget deal that's just this top line number. It doesn't get all the details on it. We can't get the first number, though, agreement between everybody. If we can get that done in the next week, then we get on to the 12 appropriation bills. We still have to get 12 appropriation bills done by September the 30th, or we're facing another government shutdown. We've had 21 government shutdowns in 40 years. This is not new. It continues to happen. What I propose is a simple proposal. If we get to the end of the fiscal year, we shouldn't hold the federal workers, hostage basically in this process. That they don't know what their job prospect is. The American people should be able to feel it. Congress should. So what I've pushed is a simple criteria. We get to the end of the fiscal year, Congress has to stay in continuous session until we actually get the budget done. At the same time, we have what's called a continuing resolution that keeps budget spending the exact same as last year, but Congress can't leave. Weekends, weekdays, we're in session. No one can travel until the budget negotiations are done. It's pretty straightforward. Most people can't leave work until the work is done. Congress, for some reason, leaves on weekends, even when there's shutdowns. If we stay here, we'll keep negotiations done and get it done better.
Yeah, so you think that'll be enough to keep people in town to work on this? Is it, I mean, it's a spending problem largely. So is it once again the pushback on military spending?
It is. So Democrats want to spend as much on non-military as we spend on military. We as Republicans have pushed back and said we should spend on what is strategic, what we need to spend on, not just some arbitrary number that if we need to spend more on defense, then we should spend more on every other single line item. That doesn't make sense. And so Democrats continue to push what they call dollar for dollar increases. If you want to do more defense spending, you got to do more increases in everything else. I think we should be more strategic. That has been the big fight. And
in terms of the defense spending, what's the argument to continue to raise the number on defense spending? I mean, I recognize we've got more issues today in terms of foreign affairs than we ever have when you look at Iran and you look at China and the other threats out there. But make the case for keeping the spending levels where you want them on defense.
So on defense, we're still trying to recover from the time in the Obama administration where they did drastic cuts in defense, and that was their focus, is where they can push dollars away from defense. So we're still recapitalizing. We still have to get to our troop levels to be correct. We're facing very different threats now as we have a rising China, we have a rising Iran. So we need to make sure that we're prepared to be defensive in that, to say, don't attack us, don't come at us, because we're fully ready to defend ourselves and our country. A stronger defense in those areas that people know that we can respond deters people from actually engagement in war in the first place. So if we show ourselves weak and not ready for the battle, that encourages people to bring the battle to us.
Senator, real quick before you go, is the fight on the left between AOC and Pelosi, or the squad and Pelosi, is that just noise, or is this underlining a fundamental difference in governing?
No, it's a fundamental difference in governing. This whole group of progressives that had come into the House, they're not only trying to take over the House, and that they are really the leaders of the House at this point. The House doesn't move unless they give permission to everyone else to be able to move. All the presidential candidates on the Democratic side have come to them for support. They are also fundraising to be able to primary most Democrats in the country. So they have not only taken on their position in the House, they're trying to take out every other Democrat and bring in people that agree with them. So this is a fundamental shift that we're watching in the Democratic Party towards a more socialist left of even where they are. In fact, I had a Democratic House member to me the other day that said Nancy Pelosi is now the moderate in our conference because so many of the new Democrats are so far left and they're really running the conference.
Yeah, and Nancy Pelosi is really not a moderate.
She is certainly not a moderate. Yeah.
Senator, it's good to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
James Lankford joining us. Be sure to stick around.